to this week's Good Work Show.
Hello.
Happy, anyway, happy Sunday to everybody. It's going to be a show that is going to feature a couple different things. So we've got Vicki Morrow, who's going to come on after the break and talk to us. She's the executive director for NBAF, which stands for National Black Arts Festival. We're going to get a sneak peek into a little bit of a brand revival revision for NBAF and hear about the work that the organization is doing. She's been on the show before. We've talked about, the work that they've been doing. But if you've ever gone to an NBAF event, you got more opportunities now to go. And if you've never been, you still have more opportunities. You have a first opportunity and a bunch of others.
Yeah.
Because they're doing something really unique and special and changing the way that organization is not only operating, but how it's going to be set up in the future. So they've got some really cool stuff coming up. And we're going to hear from Vicki after the break.
And then
Dennis. Dennis is going to come on. Dennis Bowman, who is the executive director for Nicholas House. And it's an organization that you might not have necessarily heard about, but they are doing a really great work. And so we're going to hear from Dennis after we hear from Vicki, who's going to come on. But it should be a really packed show, lots of information. We'll dig in. We talked to Dennis a little while ago, and so we're going to bring you that interview after we bring Vicki into the studio in just a couple minutes.
Yeah. Do you have art?
Do I have art? Yes. I have art that I made.
Okay, real art.
That is real art. First of all, let me just let's just be clear. Yes, I am a artist. I'm an artist, and I have art. But no, my parents have art, but I haven't really found anything that I'm really truly like I have to actually have. So I have a lot of pictures of art that I really like, but I haven't. I've created art for sure
That you like.
that people like actually. I've had
I
people.
am not doubting that you're
I've gotten actually paid to
Really?
create things. Yes.
How are we just learning this?
I don't know, but I mean, art is art. It depends.
Subjective.
Yes, very, very much so. But like I've painted some stuff, but I don't sell that type of stuff. But like graphic design, like I've absolutely sold that stuff before. I make my own shirts and stuff.
Yes.
I have in the past. My
I
sister
wanna
and
know
I
what's
have
happening.
been fashion designers before.
That is true, Wes. You have shared that.
Yes, so I've created. I have a lot of arts and crafts stuff at my house. Like pretty much half of my office is arts and crafts stuff. The other stuff is
That's cute.
Apple products. So
Well,
I mean,
that sounds about right.
That's what it is. But yeah,
I paint things because if I can't find art for a wall in my house that works, I make it myself.
yeah, I have a lot of sip and paint stuff that's in my garage though.
Oh, I don't have. No,
yeah,
I don't do that.
Yeah, I do. Oh, those are fun, but I have
No,
a lot
I've
of
gone.
those.
It's fun, but I think mine all ended up at Goodwill. So somebody bought my art,
No, they probably.
or not.
But that's why you put it in your garage. See, one of my friends
I don't
told
have a
me
garage.
because well,
You said
that's
you
right,
made
yeah.
so your garage is like an art gallery from your.
I mean, they're not actually hanging on the wall yet, but she did give me that tip because they weren't.
What do you do with that?
Yeah, I didn't
Exactly.
want to put, and they were just disparate. I mean,
Yeah, they don't-
you got like a bridge over here, and then you got the lady with the afro over here. Doesn't go
There's
together.
always I don't know. Like I feel like
Doesn't go together.
There's like a sip and paint book. There has to be of like the things because there is
It's like
always
a wine bottle tipping over with the
yes,
fruit.
and then like the lady with the flower in her hair.
Yeah.
Like there's always that option.
Right. So it doesn't go together. So, and then I go a little rogue in those classes.
That is not
Because-
surprising.
Well, that's fine. I mean, they give you, it's subjective.
Well, I
So
changed
you
the
can
colors.
go
I have
off.
done that. Like
Sometimes I'll just do my own thing.
I don't have warm colors in my house. Like I don't have like beiges and reds and that
Yeah.
kind of stuff. So like what I do at the Sip and Paints, like if that's what the color scheme is, I pick colors that match my house. I don't know why I bother because none of that stuff is ever going to hang in my house. But you
gotta
know, it's
find a
possible.
space. So the garage, one of my friends told me is the best place so that you don't have
That
to throw
sounds
it away.
great.
but you could keep it.
That's a good idea.
And then you have it somewhere where it's not going to bother you if you see it all the time.
That's true. See, my thing is photography. So, like, all the pictures in my house are pictures that I've taken.
Too. Shot on iPhone.
What? You just own it. No, but like
I'm telling you, like I have some real legit good pictures that I bet you somebody stole off of when I posted them online. They probably put it on a postcard.
There's a picture that I feel like I know has been stolen. I have this awesome picture that I was able to take at the 9/11 museum because I was staying in the hotel that overlooked the
Ground Zero.
Yes, thank you. So I have this incredible bird's eye shot that I was able to take, and I post it usually on 9/11. So there were great pictures from that, and I'm like, I'm pretty sure because then I was able to make them black and white, and it was when the lights were on. It was all really nice. But anyway, so my rule in my house is that the only photography that's in my house are pictures that I've taken. Like I don't, I don't have any pictures.
Oh, and I'm a sculptor too. the pottery thing. I'm telling you, like I got all kinds of. I might own. That's for real. I have some really good.
I don't doubt that you do because you also. Well, you do gift wrapping. That's art.
I do. I have. That's a side business. That's like my 8th job. A lot of jobs. I actually have 3 for real, like paying jobs, and then all these other jobs.
Then I don't know that you can call that a job though. Is that just not? That's just like volunteer work.
Oh no, I don't volunteer.
That you pay to do.
No.
You pay to do that.
I'm not volunteering about that. Unless it's for, I don't do it for anybody else anymore for free.
Oh, that's good.
Yeah, I can't.
No, I took my sister's a realtor, and she didn't like the cards that so she wanted me to make her business cards. So I made hers, and then all of her associates were like, "Your cards are better than ours," and she's like, "Yeah, my sister did it." So then she's like, "Well, will you do?" I was like, "No, not for free. I won't."
Yeah.
So that's my little $25 side. I don't think I'm charging enough, but I made a template.
Mean, you could always go on Fiverr. Somebody will do it for $5. So
that's true. So maybe well, don't tell them that. Don't tell them that
everybody
they can do
knows Fiverr is a great place.
I need Fiverr. I need some work done. Actually.
You could go on Fiverr and put your work on there.
I know.
Unless you got images from the internet, then you might want to.
I know, right? That's the problem.
That's not, But anyway, you could go on Fiverr and make some money.
I do think I should put. I wonder, though you can't sell your photographs to can you put them on iStock?
I think you can sell them to Getty too.
I think you can, and then people can. Maybe I should do that. That's passive income.
Yeah, I mean, if you are already,
I need to make a phone call and ask about.
That's about how do you do that?
What happens to that money?
Yeah, but there are some pieces. There's the stuff that I really, really want is when I'm in a different country and I'm like, well, how in the heck am I going to bring this back when I have one suitcase that can only weigh 25 pounds?
Right. But I will say, though,
problem.
Going to the local art thing, because when I lived, like I was, we'll talk about this later, but when I was living in D.C., there were particular artists that would always show up at Eastern Market on Saturdays and Sundays. And they had beautiful stuff. So, like, some of the pieces that I've gotten over the years have been from that. And they're not cheap, but they're not outrageously expensive
street artists.
either.
I bought stuff from street artists. I do have that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
They're not well known, but I just like it.
But the stuff is gorgeous. Yeah. And, one girl, I keep in touch with her on social media because I keep going back and forth with whether or not I want to have her, I want to commission something because I just like her art. So there's a lot of opportunities. So I'm excited to hear from Vicki, and because Atlanta's not really an arty city.
Yeah, there have been some organizations who've been around and trying to
and there's great stuff. But because I always kick myself, I never remember to go to the high on the Fulton County Free Day.
Oh, I don't live in Fulton County, so that knocks me out.
Right, but you could have Bank of America Day.
So that's one thing that we want. So I forgot. I keep forgetting. Do they still have that?
Yes.
Oh, it is still.
So
they don't remind you enough about that.
They don't remind you at all.
It used to be on all the ATMs, and then I think they took it off.
Well, they still.
I don't go to the ATM
exactly. So if you go on the website, if you are a Bank of America card holder, you do get access to museums.
And is it debit and credit?
Debit and credit, as long as you have your card, and I think it's you and a guest.
I think
it's once a month, and you have access to like thousands of museums, and they're not, of course, not just here, it's across the country. But you have access to all of that stuff. So that's one of those things that people could be taking advantage of. And then we do know at the high on one weekend a month, and I honestly don't know what it is, but Fulton County residents are able to get into the museum for free. So those are, there's a lot of there's some great, the Zuccotti Gallery I've been to quite a few times. There's beautiful stuff there. So there's a lot of really great and interesting art stuff happening. And it'll be good to talk to Vicki as, because they talk about national. They're national, so they're bringing folks in from all over the country. But they're here, and so they're also able to talk about, some of the stuff that's happening right here in our community. I like your nail polish.
Thank you.
It's very good.
Shout out to Nancy. Anyway, she's the lady who does my nails. All right. Well, anyway, we're going to have a great show talking to Vicki, and then we're going to have Dennis on from Nicholas House. So you're going to want to stick with us and stay with us for the show. A big shout out to our Duluth store team. Store open October 3rd. It's a great store. If you haven't a chance to go off of Peachtree Industrial in Duluth, make sure you see it. There may be some art in that store.
I was going to say, we may have some art.
Yeah.
And if we do, we will.
We'll share a picture when we get to that, because we're considering how we bring some art into that space in the store. Not just art to sell, by the way, which you can. There have been stories about people finding $500,000 original paintings in Goodwill. So you should really, if you're into art, you should go to Goodwill and just check it out. I mean, there's lots of stories.
You never know what my paint and sip will be worth.
You might find Trenise's paint and sip, and then right next to it, you might find a Picasso. No, you're not going to find a Picasso. Probably not. Anyway, join us after the break. We're going to bring on Vicki Morrow of NBAF. You're listening to The Good Work Show.
To learn more about the show and how your company can tell their story, like us on Facebook and follow us on Twitter @GoodWorkShow.
Audience, welcome back to The Good Work Show. We're excited because we have National Black Arts Festival in the house. Yay! We've got Vicki Morrow here, and she is going to talk to us all about National Black Arts Festival. So, Vicki, tell us about the organization. Give us a little history of the organization, though, because if folks have been to an event for National Black Arts Festival, they probably are aware. But if they haven't, or they just kind of heard of it, give us a sense of what it is.
Glad to. So National Black Arts Festival is 31 years old, and it started as an festival, a summer festival in July, founded by Fulton County, as a way to bring national artists and national audiences to Atlanta. And the artists really covered multiple arts disciplines, from music, dance, film, theater, visual, and literary arts. And so for 1 week in July, the middle of July, all of these people would sort of come into Atlanta, Fulton County, and just have an amazing experience. We would see all types of artists, and a lot of Black families really said it felt really like a family reunion, because people would come from all over.
Yeah. That's cool. I mean, I always hear about it. People are going. They have cool things. I mean, and it's kind of like a takeover. It really is.
Yeah.
It's a takeover of the city that weekend.
Yeah. Yes, it really was. The last year that we had that traditional festival was actually in 2013. And I think people don't even realize that. They'll say, "Oh, I went last year." I was like,
"No, you
maybe
didn't."
not.
Don't you love people tell you that? They're like, "I just went there." And you're like, "I'm pretty sure you didn't."
But it speaks to the impact it had on the city, the impact it had, frankly, on the nation. And we have like Mayor Bottoms came to our event last year, and she was saying that when she was traveling in Spain, people were talking about when they came to National Black Arts Festival. So it's really had a worldwide impact. And many of the artists that have come through and gotten exposure, it really gave them an elevated platform and changed the lives of many artists, visual artists in particular. When people think about NBAF, they think about the fun times, but they also think about buying visual art. I bought my first piece there, et cetera. So
talk to us about some of those artists. So like drop some names for us. Who has been here? Who has participated? Yeah, tell us.
Yeah. So thinking of a few that come to the top of mind, Radcliffe Bailey, who I think you all probably are fairly familiar with, but Elizabeth Catlett has come and commissioned work, David Driscoll, Romare Bearden. I mean, some of the greats and those that really have a long history. But even, more recently, I think a lot of people are realizing Fahamu Peku is on the scene, and he was influenced and impacted by NBAF. So a lot of different visual artists all through the years, but not just visual artists, but also performing artists have come through. But I would say that where we've had the greatest impact has really been around visual art.
Yeah, yeah. So now we're kind of talking about NBAF as like the past. You just say somebody said 2013. There's a revival and a change going on. So tell us about it, because it's really exciting, and I think it expands the opportunities for people who said, "Oh man, I was out of town. I missed it. I couldn't go that year." So tell us all about all of the good stuff that's happening.
Absolutely. So as I mentioned, 2013 was the last year, and right after that, we started focusing on one arts discipline a year. 1 year of dance, 1 year of film, 1 year of theater. And people got confused. They were like, what is it? And what are you doing? And I thought I went to the festival. And so at the end of our 30th anniversary, which was the end of 2018, we embarked on a strategic planning session, the board, the community, the organizational staff. And we really said, how do we reimagine NBAF since this once a year deal doesn't seem to be catching on? And so what we said is a couple things. One, we wanted to continue with the mission to advance the art and artists of African descent. And we wanted to keep our disciplines, the multidisciplinary aspect of it. So continue to focus on dance, music, film, theater, visual, and literary art, but no longer be bound by time. So by that, we mean we are no longer a one-week festival in July, but we really are doing different events throughout the year. So we're now evolving into a year-round arts organization, and we're doing that in a couple of different ways. So I'd love to talk more about that. And what we're doing.
Yeah. Let's go. Let's talk about it.
All right. So first of all, we said three things first. Youth. So we want to impact the next generation of artists. And what we found is in some of our underserved communities, and so we're in several APS schools, where we are reaching students that no longer have traditional arts programs and giving them an opportunity to be exposed to many of these arts disciplines. For some of those students, for the majority of the students, it's a great way to incorporate arts programs in the middle of their day. And what we've found statistically is that students that participate in the arts really score better on all statistical tests. They do better in school. They're more focused, etc. But then there are a few that actually are interested in a career in art. And so for those, we are talking to them and beginning mostly in the high school curriculums around how to consider careers in the arts. And I think when we find kids in underserved communities, they may not have had exposure to all of the arts. So putting them in a position that they see some of the things that happen behind the scenes. So not just the actor and the actress or the singer, but who's the songwriter and who did the screenplay and who designed the costumes and who did the graphic design work. So for them to think of less traditional paths as an artist and realize that they could actually make a living doing those things and following their passion. So the next space outside of youth is working to continue to engage audiences around public programs. So there was this 1 week festival that we have no longer, but we're doing pop-up events throughout the year. So this year alone, we started with the Super Bowl. We had a wearable art event at the High Museum in January, right into Super Bowl weekend. In May, we did a pop-up visual art exhibit out of a big inflatable tent at the Jazz Festival. We did a hip-hop and jazz fusion concert at City Winery.
Oh, that's cool.
Yeah, that was really cool. And it blended generations, right? So those that are interested in hip hop, for them to better understand how jazz has influenced many hip hop artists. So that was an attempt to have a wonderful evening, but also provide some education around the influences of jazz on hip hop. And then on October 22nd, for example, we're partnering with a couple of several other sponsors to bring Ta-Nehisi Coates' the theater adaptation of Between the World and Me, Atlanta, to Atlanta. So this was a theater adaptation that was started by the Apollo, and it's been in New York, and it's been in D.C., and those types of amazing performances usually don't come to Atlanta. They just don't think we have the culture and the crew. And so we worked with several other people. It was led by Ronald Williams and Camille Love and some other folks to try to bring that wonderful performance to Atlanta. It's at Symphony Hall on October 22nd, and we played a role in that coming to our city. So those are the kind of pop-up experiences, and you see there's a blend of music and theater and visual art all combined, whether we're doing it in the school systems or we're doing it for public programs at a free or nominal cost.
I would imagine kind of breaking it up like that gives you more options. So like, bringing that theater experience may not have worked out for July.
Right.
So then you would have lost that opportunity, but now you've got all year to work with.
And that's what we're hearing from a lot of people as they begin to understand what this new vision is and how it's being reimagined without the traditional festival. People are really excited about, if I didn't catch that, maybe I can catch this, and things are going on all year long. And then it gives us, from a branding and an organizational recognition standpoint, we're not just showing up once. We're showing up several times. And anytime our brand is elevated and our organization is elevated, it helps us to continue to have a platform where we can showcase artists and we can give them resources to turn their art into commerce, which is another thing we like to say.
Absolutely, yeah. And I like the way that you've plugged in with the different, with the youth and starting early and then kind of getting them thinking about, because everybody who youth, when I hear talk about, I want to be a rapper or a singer, like, yeah, that's great. Artists don't make that much money.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly, yes.
You got to be that songwriter or that producer.
Does, exactly.
Those people behind the scenes, that's how, we talk. Yeah, you see P. Diddy, he is a rapper-ish.
Yes.
But,
made his
but
money
he made his money
He made his money a different way.
So did Kanye.
Yeah.
So let's just keep, so again,
That's
I
what
think
we're
those
trying
are
to do.
really good lessons that you are starting with the youth and getting them to think about and educate them on seeing, art in a totally different way.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So you nailed it. That's what we're trying to do.
Yeah, that's fantastic. So, Vicki, we want to talk a little bit more after we take a break. We're going to take a break, come back. But I want to make sure that you've named some things that people can get involved in now and throughout the year. So let's take a minute, give them some information about how they can learn more, how they can follow the organization and what you're doing, because as Trenise said, they can join in all throughout the year.
Great. Love to.
So tell us how they can do that.
So a couple ways. Our website is mbaf.org, social media, which is where most people are paying attention now at MBAF. And so we are pretty active on IG as well as Facebook. Those are the two platforms where you see the most activity from us. But, either when you go to the website, you can sign up for our emails. So through those three channels, we have a way of communicating with everyone and sharing with them the great work we're doing and understanding further ways to engage with the organization.
Fantastic. So we're going to take a break. We're going to come back, talk a little bit more with Vicki Morrow, National Black Arts Festival. You don't want to miss it. Stay tuned to The Good Work Show. We'll be back.
To learn more about the show and how your company can tell their story, like us on Facebook and follow us on Twitter @GoodWorkShow.
Audience, we are back chatting with Vicki Morrow, and we started talking about, because she's the executive director for National Black Arts Festival. So we talked about the change, and with that change, you were also telling us through the break that there's a little bit of a name change. Not only is the brand and sort of how the operation of the organization is changing,
Right.
but the name is going to change a little bit.
Yes.
A little bit. So talk to us a little bit about that.
So the name is going to change a little bit because we're no longer a traditional festival, right? So we have talked about this for over a year about how to keep some of the legacy and the history of this iconic arts organization and still pivot. And so we've decided on using the acronym still, NBAF, but really dropping the word festival. And so it's NBAF, National Black Arts. And then that F is sort of dangling out there. And so what the F really starts to mean, instead of festival, it really means this, that we will feature it. We will find it. We will fund it, and we will fight for it. So those are the F words that the F has now begun to mean. So we are finding the talent. We're featuring the talent. We're going to fund those artists and make sure that they still have the platform that they need. And we'll fight for this long-standing organization to still be a part of not only Atlanta's art scene, but also a really iconic organization for the nation and the world.
Oh, that's fantastic. Yeah, I love the way that you incorporated that
I
F
know,
and it
'cause
has different meanings.
My
in it.
little marketing mind just started.
Yes, we have gone through
Doing
every
stuff.
F word imaginable.
I'm sure you did during the brainstorming. I'm sure there were some more interesting ones that didn't quite make it to mainstream.
Yeah, we
You probably
never
have
could
some
get a
signs
consensus.
around the office, don't you?
We have
Yeah.
lots of
Little
F
sticky
words.
notes.
Yes. But we thought, hey,
Yeah,
find it, fund it, feature it,
that's
fight for it.
fantastic.
That's
Yes.
awesome.
Yeah.
So you told us a little once about one of the events
Yes.
that's coming up. So
Yes.
what else? Because you just said that you have stuff going on all the time.
Yes,
so
we do.
We're going to hold you to that and
Yes.
hope that there's something else you can tell us about.
Absolutely. One of the other things that we just launched is something that we're calling an outdoor museum. And the outdoor museum was the brainchild of, because we support artists and their vision, so it's not our job to come up with all the visions. But Dr. Karchik Sims Alvarado is an art historian, and she wanted to figure out how could she tell the story about the role that women played in the civil rights struggle in Atlanta. Karchik wrote a book about it, and it is really largely a pictorial celebration of the role of women in that. And so she decided that instead of just, yes, she has the book, and instead of getting a traditional gallery, she wanted this art exhibit of photographs to be outdoors. And so we helped her move that exhibit from the Atlanta Beltline with our funding and our support to Freedom Parkway.
Nice.
And it's a 2-mile stretch of photographic exhibit on Freedom Parkway, and then there's a small portion of it for our downtown folks in Woodruff Park downtown, so that you can either take kids for a school tour, and they get a chance to be outside, do something fun for a field trip, and then learn a little bit about history. And it's a lot more interesting when you see it that way. So that is one of the other things that's going on this year. I mentioned to you already on October 22nd with Ta-Nehisi Coates and other sponsors that are supporting that effort at Symphony Hall, Woodruff Arts Center. And then the next big thing that we're already preparing for is Fine Art Plus Fashion. One of the big things that we do at MBAF is recognize artists of African descent who are really underrepresented in whatever their fields are. And as a part of visual art, we also include fashion design. And Michelle Obama, I think, was one of the people that I think made the nation more aware that artists of African descent really aren't usually in the fashion design industry. And so she matched her Target sweater with a Tracy Reese skirt and, maybe some Manolo Blahnik shoes. So she just had fashion up and down. And so what we're trying to do through our work is to highlight. We have a student fashion design competition where artists that are attending 4-year universities in Georgia and majoring in fashion design have a chance to compete. And so they submit their fashion designs, and we have an impartial jury that selects the top 3. They get a $2,500 scholarship. They get a window in Neiman Marcus, Atlanta for a week.
Oh, that's
Nice.
awesome.
Yes, and
That's
then
huge.
yes, and then we showcase them at our March event, and so it gives them visibility and a little financial support to use however they can to continue their fashion business. But what we also do is to highlight at that fashion event someone that's really doing something major, either in fashion or traditional visual arts. And this year we are highlighting in 2022 stars. One, June Ambrose is the stylist for Jay-Z and many other rappers. And so she's going to be recognized. She's our 2020 honoree. And our other 2020 honoree is Dapper Dan. I don't know if you heard.
Yes.
So Dapper Dan is, the 70-year-old fashion icon in New York. And
he's really getting his flowers this year.
Yeah,
he really is.
Yes. So, we're excited about those two, and they will serve obviously as examples for our fashion design students. They'll have conversations with these two fashion icons and be able to get some tips on how to navigate their career and continue to improve. So those are the things that are on the horizon, the shorter horizon for NBAF.
Yeah,
Well,
cool.
now, if you need help with those Elaine and I do really good
That's
window
right,
design.
we do.
Okay.
I'm just saying.
We do.
I'm
I
gonna be the
want to
models
come
as
to the
well.
fashion event. What
Oh,
is
we're
it?
coming
What is
to
it
that.
for
Yes,
one?
we
What
will.
is-
Yeah.
what is-
So we've actually got 2. We've got a preview
Okay.
on October 29th.
Okay.
And then we've got the big fashion event March 26, 2020.
Okay,
So those
all
are
right,
the 2
I'm
things
coming.
coming up. Yes. We'll
Okay.
make sure that you guys know about that.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay. So so because you've been in this space for a while, Vicki, what is Atlanta missing? So we have a lot of you mentioned because you can do the women of civil rights, you can do that in Atlanta. I mean,
Yes.
you absolutely should
Yes.
do that in Atlanta.
Yeah.
But as far as the arts, and you mentioned. People didn't think that you could be a draw for the kind of events that you could have in Atlanta. What's Atlanta missing? What's it going to take for us to get recognized as that place? Because we're recognized for so many things, good and bad,
Yes.
in Atlanta. But for the arts, and particularly for Black art.
So had this conversation just last week, and the artist and I have it often. But, I think Atlanta needs to do a couple of things. One, we really need to understand as patrons of the arts that we have to invest and we have to support our artists, whether they are performing artists, whether they're visual artists. We have to go to their shows. We have to buy their music. We have to support and buy Black art. These are the things that we have to do regardless of our race, because if we are not supporting those artists, most Black artists and maybe all artists think they can't make a living in this city because we do not support them
Now,
financially.
does that extend beyond Black artists in that community, or is Atlanta? Because I think about it. I mean, I spent quite a few years in DC, and like the idea of going to a museum was not outrageous,
Right.
To be
It was
like,
the norm.
it was the norm. Like
Yeah.
that's what you do. You go
Yeah.
to museums. You go to this exhibit. You go to this. Like that
Yep.
was fine. But to say,
That's an art city, though.
Yes.
Right. So,
Yeah.
so
Yeah.
in general, though, is Atlanta not seen, or is it an Atlanta thing? Is it a Southern thing? Is it a regional thing? Like, I mean,
think it's
Miami
all
has
of that.
created with
Yeah.
Art Basel. It's created an art scene. So,
Correct.
is that something that Atlanta still needs to do, just in general, even beyond the idea of Black art, but just in general, just art?
Yes. The
Okay.
answer to that is yes. I think that it's an Atlanta thing. It's a Southern thing. It has to do with exposure to the arts. It has to do with appreciation of the arts. And so you mentioned 2 of the larger cities, whether it's Miami, Art Basel has created that for them. If you think of D.C., museums are everywhere.
Yes.
The Smithsonian, the section.
And they're free.
Yes.
And they're free.
And they're
so
free.
That makes a
New
big
York,
difference.
art is everywhere. So, children that grew up in those environments were exposed for free and everybody had access. That's the other reason we like the idea of this outdoor museum.
Yes.
Yes.
Even as small as this is one exhibit, but it's free. and it's not intimidating. So one of the things I love what Doug Shipman and Rand Suffolk have done at the High Museum and Woodruff Arts Center. They've done everything they can to try to make it accessible, to make it free. They've done things to remake the campus. So that's beyond Black art. But letting people know that art is accessible to everyone, it's affordable for everyone, and anybody can do it. Those are the things culturally we have to become more sophisticated as Southerners, because I'm originally from Birmingham and we didn't have access either. But yes, and more exposure, more free things. And then last but not least, those of us that have some discretionary income have to speak with our dollars. Buy one less dress, one less red bottom shoe, and go buy a piece of art.
You know what, Vicki? I'm so glad then that NBAF has changed, because now you can be a catalyst for this. Now there's not being, solely focused on that 1 week, but now breaking it apart gives you a nice seat at the table to be able to lead that. So thank you so much for your time.
Thank you for the opportunity.
And really just kudos to you and the team for taking the step to do, I'm sure putting on that 1 week was a whole year's worth of work.
Yeah.
But now you got a whole year's worth of work to play.
The work is the work.
Yes. But thank you so much for your time.
Thank you so much for having
and helping
me.
to advance the art scene. And like Trenise was just alluding to, not just Black art, but really making the connections. You mentioned connection to Doug Shipman at Woodruff, and putting it all together, because we have a little ways to go in Atlanta, but we can do it. We got a lot of talent here.
We can do it. So much talent here.
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you. You're listening to The Good Work Show.
To learn more about the show and how your company can tell their story, like us on Facebook and follow us on Twitter @GoodWorkShow.
Audience, welcome back to The Good Work Show. We are sitting here with Dennis Bowman, who is the executive director of Nicholas House. Welcome to the show.
Thank you. I'm glad to be here. Appreciate it.
Absolutely. So tell us all about Nicholas House and the mission of the organization.
Sure. Nicholas House, our mission is to help homeless families to become self-sufficient long-term. And we do that by providing a temporary place to stay while also addressing the root causes of why a family may be homeless, so they're never homeless again when they leave our services.
Wow.
Well, that's the big part.
Yes.
Yeah, that's the important part.
Yeah.
Because our mission is about self-sufficiency, not just about housing.
Got it.
Many times I say I'm not a homeless organization, we're a self-sufficiency organization.
Nice.
Yeah.
So talk to us though. So we've had a lot of organizations on. We've had and I'm blanking out. We had Raphael on from Gateway Center.
Center.
On, and we've had some other folks that are working in this space, and we always ask them to share with our audience the scope of what is the scope of the issue here in Atlanta. We want to make sure that our audience never forgets the problems that you are working so hard to solve. So if you can share some of those numbers with us, that'd be great.
And it could be defined in many different ways, different ways of counting the various homeless population. So, for example, we deal with family homelessness only.
Right.
So right now, the last statistics we have, we do a homeless count every January. And the last statistics we have that in the Fulton, DeKalb, City of Atlanta area, there were about 1,100 homeless children and parents. So about 800 of those are children. So about 800 children on a single night.
Wow.
So now many school systems will say, for example, the DeKalb and the City of Atlanta school system says there's more than 2,000 children in their school system that they consider to be homeless. And that's by another type of definition that they use. So the problem is very large. In fact, it's about, for families, homeless families, it's about 37% of the homeless population in DeKalb and Fulton County are actually families. And you often don't see families who are homeless. You see the individual man at the end of the exit ramp, which is a true, real face of homelessness. But increasingly what homelessness is a little girl or a little boy and their parents trying to find a place.
Yeah. And why don't you explain, because if people thinking, well, why don't I see that? I mean, you may, every once in a while, you may see a family that's doing, kind of what you mentioned, but just explain, because we've heard other organizations kind of verbalize this before. Why isn't it that they're not as visible?
Right. Well, first of all, parents always want to protect their children, right? So they're probably not going to be out and about as much. They are probably sleeping in cars. They can sleep in, they may sleep in parks. Even some people, we've come to our facility who are in a public storage facility, right? But most of the time, there's a lot of couch surfing going on. When you're moving from friend to friend, to a family member, and you can only stay a little period of time. Then you have to find your next place to stay, and so that's why you don't see families as often. But interestingly enough, the Department of Housing and Urban Development (HUD) does not count those people as being homeless. That's why the counts sometimes for families are a little bit different. If you are just moving from place to place, staying with a friend or so, they consider that you have a place to live, so you're not homeless, even though you really don't have a place. Wow. Or if you just scrape together enough money to stay at an extended stay hotel for 2 or 3 days, and then you're going to be out in the streets again, they don't consider you homeless under that definition.
Well, what do you have to be?
Literally
sleeping on the street.
Literally sleeping in the streets without, or a place not meant for humans' habitation.
To sleep.
Wow.
To sleep.
Artificially low numbers.
Well, they're not artificially low if all you want to count are just the people who are literally in the streets, right?
Yeah.
But there are so many people who may not be there who are still unable to maintain their own housing. And that's where we come in at Nicholas House to help people get into housing quickly and to have a plan of sustainability long term. So they don't need our services.
That's why it's so important to have organizations like yours to dig into that, because that's a really important distinction.
Right.
It really is. I mean, every once in a while I get rowdy on the show when I hear something I didn't know before, and this is one of those.
That's one of those ones. Yeah, that's an interesting way to count.
Well, the school system defines differently. They define it as those people who are moving from place to place, and that's why they have between 2,000 and 2,500 students in the school system that they consider to be homeless because they know where they're picking people up at.
Well, they know, and they know if I try to send something they don't have a place to send documents or whatever. So.
But the good news is that we are making a difference.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
And we've seen that in the numbers, because the numbers are beginning to decline.
That's fantastic.
And since about 2015 or so, about 6 years ago, we've probably saw a 20% reduction in family homelessness.
That's fantastic.
Specifically across those, Fulton, DeKalb, and City of Atlanta areas. So the numbers are beginning to move, and we do have a goal to make, as a community-wide network, to make family homelessness rare, brief, and non-reoccurring. Right? It's going to be rare when it happens. It'll be brief when it happens, and it will never happen again if we can get you back onto your feet.
And work yourself out of a job.
That's the idea. Unfortunately, Nicholas House has been around for 37 years. That's 37 years too long. Right? And so we do need to be able to make sure that families are no longer sleeping in the streets or
Absolutely.
From place to place.
Absolutely, yeah. And that stability, which I think is important. We're kind of getting off of this a little bit, but why it's important for the schools to classify it that way, because as a student, if you don't have that stability of having a home, that automatically is going to bleed over and affect your performance in school.
Absolutely.
You hear, and it's great when we hear those success stories of kids who have gone on and done great things, or they're going to Harvard.
And it's like the one story every year, and we're supposed to be so excited about that. And you're like, well, you know what? That's one kid that fought against all of the odds to be able to make that happen. And we're supposed to look at that story like it's a great success, which it is for that one kid, but it's still not solving the systemic problem of all of the other kids.
And that might not, and it's probably not the story for the norm. The other 100, 900, whatever, 1999 that are left out of the 2000s.
Yes.
Okay. Math is not my strong suit. Anyway, so let's get back to what it is and talking. And so we're talking about some of the programs. You've got a number of different programs at Nicholas House. We've got about 5 minutes left. Let's dig into some of those.
Sure. Well, actually, no family is the same. So they all have different needs. So we have multiple programs to serve families at different stages of need. And so there is a prevention program for people who can maintain their own rent, but they just need a little help getting started with deposits, et cetera. We have another program for people with some income, but not quite enough. So we get them into a lease, an apartment with their name. They pay 30% of their income toward rent. Then we make up the difference with subsidy until we can grow their income overall. We help people, grow their income. We have another program that is for people with no income at all, our shelter facility, which is located downtown. So people come in there and they get stabilized, get a plan of action, get a job, and then we can start talking about moving into an apartment. And then we still have another program for people probably with no income, but also with added disabilities of some kind. So greater barriers. We have to deal with some health issues before moving on to economic independence. So across the board, Nicholas House every night is probably housing about 300 homeless children and parents every night. And for all those programs, the key goals are, earn a living wage, have a healthy family dynamic, and maintain your own housing long term.
And I would imagine that the first program, I think it was the first one that you mentioned about getting folks on that first step, they might have the income to be able to pay the rent. But when you're trying to do first and last and move,
Right.
that's a
Deposit, everything, yeah.
huge
hump to get over.
Exactly.
That, you know, how long would it take for somebody to be able to have this, but then save up to be able to have that? What an incredible burden to have lifted to be able to, you know, be able to make that step. Because you're like, well, I can do it once I'm there.
Right.
It's just the getting there that you can't do.
Right. And that's what we do. Is what's incredible is that we see in all these families, you know, so often you think of homelessness and it's due to substance abuse or mental health issues, but in family homelessness, and that is a true statement many times, but in family homelessness, it's really an economic issue. It's people who are living on the edge instead of earning a living wage, and something happens in their life that pushes them off that edge into homelessness that to any one of us, it might be sustainable, or we have the network or the savings to get by. But with that family, it didn't. And so with the help of the community, Nicholas House is able to take those families and give them that support that's needed in order to get them back on their feet into a lease and a sustainable plan moving forward, either through our own housing subsidies, through our after-school programming and summer camp programming for the kids to get them back up to grade level and moving forward, or through our employment navigation that helps them really find a job quickly on a more career-oriented path with increasing earning potential, not just a small minimum wage job.
Yeah. So, Dennis, tell us about a family that you might have encountered since you've been at Nicholas House that has really flourished because of the work that you and your team are doing. Can you give us an example? And of course, if you want to, talk in generalities, but we just want to get a sense of who are some of the people who have gone on and really been successful with the support of Nicholas House?
Well, absolutely. There's so many different stories. Every time you see a door, behind that door is another story of another family, how they became homeless and how they can be successful moving forward. I remember one time I was actually walking through the dining facility area there, and there was a little group of people standing around, and a woman was holding this picture of a really lovely house. And I went over, I said, "Oh, is this the house you're going to be moving into?" And she said, "No, this is the house that I used to live in." And Miss Alcara, Miss Smith, she actually was a single divorced mom with 4 children, doing very nice. She had a 4-bedroom brick house in the cul-de-sac of a suburb of Atlanta. Everything was doing fine until she lost her job through a corporate downsizing, which happens, right?
Yep.
So, but she's had severance. She thought she was going to be fine. But she had a very unique job and a unique job skill set, and she could never find another job quickly enough. And her severance soon went down, and she basically said as her bills piled high and her savings dwindled down, that she froze. She didn't know what to do anymore. She started actually having garage sales every weekend, selling the things out of her house in order to meet the next mortgage payment. And eventually that all dried up too. And so she eventually found herself evicted. She went from house to house, friends and family, neighbors, whatever. And then eventually she had to come to Nicholas House, and she found Nicholas House, where she was able to get there and realize that, here she is, she was perfectly fine, doing fine. And a year later, she was evicted, living in a homeless shelter, and she was tracking her house online, and it was sitting there vacant still, not sold.
Yeah.
And she could be living there. Right?
Wow.
But at Nicholas House, she was able to get mental health counseling, get out of some of the depression that she was in. She got involved in our employment opportunities in terms of learning new skill sets, also about how to define yourself better in the job search market. So, you can take transferable skills to another area. Her kids who were falling behind in school, right? They were becoming a little bit troublesome. They got back in school, got back on grade level, began to flourish again just because of the stability that a home can bring to people. And as a result, they actually moved out of Nicholas House in a very short order, in probably about 3 months. And they were she was able to obtain another very well-paying job. And she is now in an apartment with her family, but she is in a home buying program to buy another house very shortly, in one that she can afford long-term.
Wow. Well, you know what, Dennis, we are out of time, but we loved hearing about that story and the work that Nicholas House is doing. Thank you so much for being on the show today.
Well, I appreciate it. And of course, if anyone's interested in learning more about us, they can go to nicholashouse.org on the web.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
You're listening to The Good Work Show.